Friends, so much to discuss, so much going on in the parashiyot. I must share with you a mitzvah today, which I consider to be the most difficult mitzvah in the entire Torah. Bar none. And when I explain it to you, you'll be like, yep, it's a hard mitzvah. We know that Yaakov is now equipped with his wife and his children, and he has merit. He spent 20 years by his uncle Lavan, who swindled and cheated him and treated him extremely badly. And he's now feeling, after he has all his wives and kids with him, he can make his way back to Eretz Yisrael. There's a problem. And the problem is he has a twin brother who still wants to kill him, Esav. And so he devises a plan of praying to Hashem, of course, of creating gifts that he thought will tranquilize Esav and control him. And he also prepares for battle. All of these things he does in order to protect himself, his wife, and his kids. Even so, he is afraid. And there's a double fear. Listen very carefully to this amazing pasuk. We're in Pasha Vayishlach, Lamed Bet, 32, Lev, we're in the heart of the Torah. Vayira Yaakov. Yaakov was very, very afraid. Ma'od, extremely. Why? Vayetzelah. And he was also very, very disturbed. What's he disturbed about? Well, he's disturbed about his brother Esav. His brother Esav is trying to kill him. Why is there a double fear? Why is there Yira and Vayetzer? Why is this double fear? So Rashi says that there's a double fear because he's concerned that he will get killed, but he's also concerned that he's going to end up having to kill his twin brother. He doesn't want to do that either. Even in self-defense, where it's fully justified to kill Esav, there's still a fear he's going to be doing that as well. Why? You are Yaakov Avinu. What are you so scared about? You have power, spiritual merit. We know when he comes, he says to the family, Lavan Garti, I live with Lavan, but Garti, I live, but Tariag mitzvot shemarti, I kept all the mitzvot, or the mitzvot he was able to keep. And therefore, he had tremendous merit that was with him. What exactly is he afraid about? What tool, weapon does Esav have that Yaakov is concerned about? And the answer to this, my friends, is unbelievable, and it has so much life application, it's unbelievable. The answer is, my dear friends, that Esav had one mitzvah that he did really, really well. He actually is the test case for this mitzvah, and it is Kibud Avaim. He was the master at honoring his father and his mother. That one merit, we don't realize, has the ability to hold back Yaakov, hold back his tremendous wives and his kids, hold back his mission to return back to Eretz Yisrael, to create a whole new future that he was promised by Hashem. But if you have Kibbur Ava'em on your side, there's what to worry about if your enemy is good at it. Now let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about this mitzvah, because it's very unusual. We know that Esav obviously was not Jewish and won't become the Jewish people, but he's still doing Kibbur Avim. Now it does appear in the Aseret Dibrot. But here's a very unusual thing, and I'm going to give you a modern day example of this. Kibbur Avim in the Gemara is learned out from a non-Jewish young boy. And his name was Dama ben Netina. Dama ben Netina was the master, the Gemara tells us, at Kibbur Avim. And there's a very famous story that I'm sure many of you have heard, but there's another story I'm going to tell you about him, that he had a father who was relatively wealthy, who had a special gem, which the Rabbanim wanted for the Choshen Mishpat, for the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. And so they went to the house of Dam ben Sina, and they knock on his door, and they say, excuse me, we'd like to buy this gem. And he's like, I can't sell it. She goes, why not? Because it's hidden away in a safe. And the key to the safe is under my father's pillow, so I can't get it for you. And they turned around and said, well, go wake him up. And he said, wake up my father? Are you crazy? I honor my father and mother. I would never wake him up. And they're like, well, if you don't sell it to us now, we're going to find another deal elsewhere. You're going to miss out on this deal. And he's like, and so I'm going to miss out on the deal. Mach patli, I don't care. I'm not going to give in on this one mitzvah. And kachava, they went away, and he lost out on this deal. In the honor of this particular mitzvah, in the honor of this mitzvah that he did so well, a year later or so, he had a flock of cattle, and one of them ended up becoming a para aduma, a red heifer, which the rabbis needed in order to do the mitzvah of para aduma, to be mitar the people to go up to Har HaBayit, and it was okay. He had that, and he made the money back. Let me ask you a question, my dear friends. Imagine you're Tam ben Asina's father, and a bunch of rabbis come to the door, and they say, we got a deal for you, you're not going to anywhere else. And this is the deal of the century. And your little kid says, no, my dad's sleeping. If you're Tam's father, what would you say? When you woke up? You should have woken me up. You're out of your mind. Are you out of your mind? Wake me up. I could have made millions of dollars on this deal. I'll go shluffy right afterwards. I'll sign the contract, take the money. What are you doing over here? What's the big deal? You know what we learn about Tam ben Asina's father, which is so important? His father and his mother were absolutely insane. They were crazy people. He was an abused child. Now I'm going to tell you another story about him. Listen to this story, but I'm going to update it to modern day times. Listen to this fascinating story to show you how difficult the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em was, that Esav was able to do it and accrue enough merit to terrify Yaakov Avinu. Listen to this. Imagine you got a young boy, and this boy at the age of 5 years old is kicked out of the house. His parents say, you're disgusting, we don't want you, get out of the house. Off he goes. And he goes living on the streets, and he stays on friends' couches, and he goes to school when he can, and he makes extra money on the side, mowing people's lawns, helping in stores, whatever it is. But he does well. He goes to school, he graduates school, he goes to high school. Nothing from his parents, garnished. He graduates high school, top of his class. And he gets into college. Not only college, he gets to Harvard. And he goes to Harvard. His parents, garnished, nothing at all. And he does well in Harvard, and he has to pay his own way. His parents give him nothing. They kicked him out of the house when he was 5 years old. And now he's at Harvard, and he works hard, and he studies, and he makes money on the side. And then he graduates top of his class, and he goes to law school. And now he's at law school, we'll give it Yale. One of the best law schools. Nothing from his parents. They weren't in his graduation. Nobody was there. And now he's at law school and he works hard, doing side jobs, paying tuition. And he graduates law school, top of his class. And he gets a job, one of the top law firms in Manhattan. And now he's working at this law firm. And he makes his way up and up and up. And he pays his old debts. And he gets married and he has kids. His parents, not in his life at all. And after working at this law firm, becoming partner for many years, he gets nominated for the Supreme Court of America. He's now the highest level, the greatest position in America, the Supreme Court, just 9 members, and he gets elected to it. And the day of his inauguration into the Supreme Court comes around. Listen to this. And he goes, and he's in front of a large crowd ready to induct him into the Supreme Court. And there are millions of people watching on television. And he's about to be sworn in. And suddenly, he sees the doors at the back of the Supreme Court, boom, open up. And he sees his mother, who he has not seen for decades, walk in. And she walks over to him in front of all these people, millions watching. And she takes off her glove. And she smacks him in the face, and she spits in his face, and says, you were a nothing, and you're still a nothing. And she drops her glove on the floor in disgust, and she starts to walk out. And then this man does the following. He bends over, picks up the glove, and says, Ima, mother, I think you forgot your glove. That, says the Gemara, actually happened. Dan Benetina was treated terribly by his parents. He was kicked out of his house. His parents abused him and mistreated him. And he made his way on his own merits up to the highest levels, up to Roman Supreme Court that existed in his day. And he was about to be inducted, and this is exactly what happened. His mother walked in, and she spat in his face, and she said, you are a nothing, you were always a nothing, you're still a nothing. He never got angry. He never lost it with her. He kept his cool, and he was able to be mechabed her in the most challenging way. And the Gemara says, oh, now that is kibud av v'em. And you turn around, what are you talking about? She's a complete psychopath. They're completely crazy. It doesn't say you have to love your parents. That's not what it says. It says you have to be mechabed them and yira them and fear them, both equally, imma va'aba, father and mother, even if they're totally insane, and you have real tainas against them, real arguments against the way they brought you up, you still have to keep your mouth shut. That is what Esav was able to do, and that is what Yaakov was terrified of. How much merit? Because he'd been out of the house for 20 years. He couldn't honor his father Yitzchak and his mother Rivka, and so he'd done all the mitzvot, but kibbud av v'em he couldn't do, and so he was stuck. But Esav was accruing merit for the tremendous amount of kibbud av v'em that he was doing, and that terrified Yaakov Avinu. Even the word itself, kavod, is related to the word kaved. It's heavy. It brings with a lot of work when it comes to dealing with our parents. But why? Why is it that this particular mitzvah has so much power that it can hold back the greatest man alive in his day, that he becomes frightened in the face of this one mitzvah? And by the way, make no mistake, it applies to us today as well. If we're dealing with an enemy who knows how to honor their parents, we could be in trouble. And you can't do anything about it except match mitzvah with mitzvah. We have to work on this particular mitzvah. It's not easy. And by the hilachot or kibbud av v'em, wow, I'll just give you a quick preview of some of the mitzvot. Did you know that if your father and mother walk into the room, you have to stand up for them? Right? Because some of your parents. I mean, not every time they walk in, you'll be like a yo-yo, at least the first time. You're not allowed to call your parents by their first name. If a father's name is Moshe, right, and your mother's name is Sarah, you can't call them that. You have to call it Ima, Abba. Actually, the halacha is, if someone says to you, oh, by the way, what is your father's name? And your father's name is, I don't know, Moshe. You can't say Moshe. You got to say, my father's name is Moshe. My mother's name is Sarah. They should live and be well. And give a bracha at the same time. If your father has a chair that he sits in all the time, you're not allowed, right? My son is over here, not allowed to sit in Abba's chair. And the kids will say, oh, let me sit. He goes, no, I'm not mochel you. Don't do it. And by the way, people don't realize it applies to a mother's chair as well. It's just that usually a mother sits in different chairs around the table, right? So if she doesn't have a makam kavua, a set seat, you're actually allowed to. But if even your mother has a set seat, you're not allowed to sit in it. You're not allowed to, check this out, you're not even allowed to contradict your parents if they say something. Even in halakha, even if you're sure you're right, keep your mouth shut. If you're going to say something, I mean, we've lost it today. Right? We saw the Mishnah, those who are here on Shabbat, that unfortunately, children, old people are now standing up in front of young children. One of the pre-messianic predictions in the Mishnah is that it's olam hafuch, that now we're in a world where it's reversed. old people show honor to young people rather than young people showing honor to older people. It's a big problem. We're losing merit because of this. We're losing zchut because of this one mitzvah that we need to do well. It is true that once you get married, it does shift a little bit. Once you get married and your parents say, go get me a cup of milk, right, from the kitchen, but you're living 50 miles away, you're like, I'm sorry, I'm married, I've got kids. So it's a little unusual that suddenly I'm like, I'd love to, I really want to, but I'm not able to. Okay? Your spouse, there is a shift. There is a shift. I will say, as a side point, as someone who does a lot of counseling of soon-to-be married couples, Baruch Hashem, and I've performed at this point maybe 150 weddings as well, and people have been married for 1 year or 5 years. When it comes to dealing with in-laws, right, by the way, the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em does apply to in-laws, but, Baruch Hashem, not as much as your own parents. But it is there. It is there. You do have to honor your in-laws as well, and we have many jokes on this. But jokes aside, you still have to be very, very careful when it comes to them as well. But I always tell people I'm counseling that if you want, if your spouse complains about their parents, that's their prerogative. You can't jump in and be like, yeah, I hate them too. Right? Do not complain to your spouse about their parents. Do not do that. If they want to, you got to play they're not so bad. All right, they're stressed out, a little bit cuckoo, you know what I'm saying? You can be like, but it's okay, it's going to be fine. I've seen so many shalom bayit problems come where people start to battle with their in-laws through their spouse. It's actually part of kibbud av v'em. Truth be told, and this is a whole topic in of itself, this also applies to older siblings. The same pasuk, says the Gemara, that teaches us kibbud av v'em, right? In the Sefer Dibrot, we also learn you have to honor, it's the extra vav, by the way. Kabet et avicha ve'et imecha. That vav teaches you older siblings, which Yaakov is dealing with Esav. That's his older brother. So he now has to be careful with how he deals with his older sibling. Because then now this is extremely hard mitzvah, right? Because older siblings are there, right, Moshe Simcha, to drive you absolutely crazy. That's what they're paid for. But there is a level, it's not the same level as of kibbud av v'em, because it's learned out from the extra vav, if I remember correctly, from my yeshiva days. But truth be told, also an older sibling has it. When it comes to parents, however, we accrue tremendous merit of fighting off our enemies. And that's what Yaakov was worried about in order to defeat our enemies today. And by the way, our main enemy today, actually, when it comes to their own parents, you see they show some love. Right? If they're not putting them in the way of harm, they show some love. They get merit for that. We have to be very, very careful when it comes to this mitzvah. God willing, B'ezrat Hashem, in the merit of kibbud av v'em nolam mitzvot, we have to fight off all our enemies, God willing, B'ezrat Hashem, and see a Yeshua, B'ezrat Hashem, Bekarov. Amen.